Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session on rethinking public safety and community accountability. My name is Frieda Afary. I am an Iranian-American public librarian in Los Angeles and a member of the Social Responsibilities Roundtable of the American Library Association. Really delighted to be here with you and with our esteemed scholar activists, Romarilyn Ralston and Burnette. I will read you a short biography of each, and then we will start conversation. I will ask them a few questions, and then we will open it up to all of you to present your questions. Romarilyn Ralston identifies as a Black feminist abolitionist with an incarceration experience. She earned a bachelor's degree in gender and feminist studies from Pritzker College and a master's degree in liberal arts from Washington University in St. Louis after 23 years of incarceration. She is the senior director of the Justice Education Initiative at the Claremont Colleges and former executive director of Project Rebound at California State University, Fullerton, a program that supports the higher education and successful reintegration of the formerly incarcerated. Romarilyn is currently writing her memoir about her 23 years of incarceration. Burnette is an advocate for the restoration of civil and human rights for justice-impacted individuals. He is a co-founder and executive director of the Prism Way, an organization dedicated to providing resources that help people live meaningful and socially aligned lives. With a master's degree in communication studies from California State University, Los Angeles, Alan is an authority in communication and social behavior. He serves as a member of the Human Rights Watch National Life Without Parole Leadership Council, Project Rebound at Cal State Los Angeles, and the Transformative In-Prison Work Group. He is also an in-prison educational program consultant with Parole Justice Works and a board member with Families United to End Life Without the Possibility of Parole. Alan's life is a testament to the power of community and education. After spending 28 years of incarceration, his life without the possibility of parole sentence was commuted by California Governor Gavin Newsom in 2019. His transformative journey inspires others to strive for higher education and self-improvement and to believe in the potential of each human being. So welcome, Romarilyn and Alan. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us and share your knowledge, your experience, your vision. I have a few questions to start with, and then we will ask audience members to also raise their questions. We have a total of 1 hour, so we'll make the best use of our time. So my first question is that each of you has experienced more than 2 decades of incarceration. Both of you are now leaders in higher education and promoting human rights. What in your journey can illuminate the topics of rethinking public safety and community accountability? What, in your opinion, are the basic principles of public safety and community accountability? And before I take your answers, I just wanted to remind, Romarilyn and Alan already know, but I just want to tell the audience, I have a really bad back. So every few minutes I have to stand up and then sit down again. So no offense to anyone. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Romarilyn and Alan.
Marilyn, would you like to go first?
After you, Alan.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just begin by saying I'm excited to be here. Happy to see everyone, see your names on the screen. Frieda had already pretty much given you a little background about myself, but one thing I would like to say is that my what I'm going to share is just basically my opinion and my beliefs. And oftentimes our opinion and beliefs are rooted in our, our personal experiences. And if I say anything that is contrary to what you believe or something that upsets you, it's not my intention. I'm just sharing. And so with that being said, with regards to the question, I think really what was, and I'm going to speak from my own personal experience, what was beneficial to me was education while I was incarcerated. I was an individual who was deemed retarded when I was younger because I refused to read and interact with other children. So school had always been like, it was a challenge for me. I did eventually go on to, to go to high school, and I was arrested at 18 years old. So that was the end of my educational journey. But when I got to prison, primarily to a forward-thinking institution where 90% of the population of the men there were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and these men were involved in community colleges through correspondence and a lot of self-help programs. And it was in that space where I began to really, to flourish. And education became like the saving grace to me. And I was able to marry those two ideas about the cognitive behavioral therapy and my education in a way that made me look back on my life and really understood and understand how I became a person who could harm another human being. And I think it's important just to kind of like bring this up. I'm in California, and in order for a person to reenter society, a person who has a life sentence, who was sentenced to life, they have to go through the parole process. And the parole process, one of the requirements is that you have to be able to look back at your childhood and share with the parole board what childhood traumas impacted your life and how that informed your decision making. And it's interesting because if you can explain that, then they feel a little bit more confident that you will be able to come home and not commit the same crime that you did to bring you to prison in the first place. The interesting part about that is that if the parole board in the state of California is aware that, the adverse childhood experiences are the root causes to why people commit crime, and they understand about environment, things like that, that's where, for me, that's where I think the public safety should start when addressing those issues at the childhood level, as opposed to waiting for someone commits a horrible crime and then trying to figure it out on the back end. But more to the question, to the point, it was definitely education that really supported me, and then being in a community space where where other men were vulnerable, and being vulnerable was a way to develop empathy and really like take responsibility and accountability for the harm that we caused. A lot of men that are incarcerated, they were abused as children, whether sexually, physically, or mentally. And those things like informed a lot of the decision making, myself included, that we had that led us to gangs and substance abuse and other things of that nature. So yeah, I'll share that.
Well, thank you, Al. And thank you, Frieda, for having us. And hello, everyone. My name is Romarilyn Ralston. I'm so happy to be here to talk about this really important topic of abolition. To your question, Frieda, what are the basic principles of public safety and community accountability? I think for most of us, we would probably sum it up as, having something in place to where our community members, our friends, our families, our neighbors, feel safe, where there's entities that can support our needs, to aid us when we are harmed, to provide for us when we're in need. I think these are kind of the basic principles of public safety and community accountability. Unfortunately, they're kind of dichotomies, they're one over here lives in this government kind of space, public safety, where we include agencies and law enforcement and fire and all of these kinds of things that are put in place by the government to protect and to serve. And then I think under the community accountability framework, we want to give that power, that authority, that agency to community members to build in their communities those same types of supports, but to come from a different place, a heart place, a healing place, a supportive place, not necessarily a place of control and government oversight. So, they for me anyway, I kind of see them as, operating in general with the intention of helping community members, provide for themselves, protect themselves, take care of themselves, those kinds of things. Unfortunately, the public safety space, has this overarching, law enforcement, protection, control, punishment, surveillance. And that includes military and corrections and all of that under the public safety umbrella. And I think that's where it gets a little tricky. Although all of these folks who are in these service jobs, or community members, they take on a different persona and a different attitude when they are police officers, peace officers, agents of the state. And it just shifts, I think, what's really supposed to be about serving and protecting our communities. And I think that's what's really important about community accountability. Those of us who live in proximity with one another, are able to know one another in deep, rich, and personal ways where we should be providing and caring for one another, and holding each other up, but also calling each other in and addressing the issues of harm in our communities in a way that, provides not just opportunities for folks to redeem themselves, but for restoration from that harm from one another. And that's the difference, I think, between public safety and community accountability. There's not this place of restoration and forgiveness and reconciliation all the time. With public safety, it's about punishment and control and paying a debt to society when you harm someone. And it puts us at odds, and it really destroys, I think, our humanity in ways that we may not be able to recover, unfortunately, because that kind of control and power over other individuals who a lot of times are suffering from mental health issues, from issues of poverty, issues of violence, and all the other kinds of things that happen in our communities are sometimes not in control of their behavior. And so if we don't have community accountability, if we don't have something else in place that does not include isolating people in prisons and removing them from their community, punishing them, stripping them of their dignity and humanity, our world is going to continue to be in the state that it is, a very violent, chaotic, and less passionate world.
Thank you. I mean, listening to you and Alan, and based on other conversations that we've had, it's so difficult to talk about rethinking public safety and community accountability when we're dealing with these very established structures of capitalist alienation, racism, patriarchy, homophobia, that are affecting people's minds and daily practices. And So, and then people like Tarana Burke and Mariam Kaba, when they speak of transformative justice, they're always very mindful of the fact that we're not, this can't just be a voluntarist effort saying we're going to do this. We have to address the structural issues. So long as those structural barriers are in place, what we can do at the community level is very limited. Nevertheless, so how can you say a little bit more about what we can do in terms of transformative justice? And Alan, with Life Without the Possibility of Parole, the network that you have in trying to get rid of life without the possibility of parole. What is it that we can do given the current structural barriers that we have in terms of promoting transformative justice, and also how you are how you help us as library staff and other members of the audience here confront this fear-mongering of the extreme right, which of course is not new, but it's reached a new higher level with the rise of social media and disinformation. This fear-mongering that is preventing people from, ordinary people around the world, from really addressing the structural issues, and instead focuses them on hating others. So that was a lot, I know, but if you can answer that in a few minutes, I would really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, with regards to fear mongering, it's very interesting. In 1994, you remember that they had this term called super predators, where our current president was more at the forefront of on the floor speaking about the super predator bill and the crime bills and all those things. And we see the result of that now, just recently with this whole mass incarceration, you know, and it's based on that fear mongering, and it was based on like just branding a class of people as fatherless, godless, you know, people that were roaming the streets. And, you know, I fell into that labeling, you know, and that's how I ended up. First of all, let me just back up. I am completely 100% responsible for my crime, and I've always, you know, taken full responsibility. But the way that, you know, my life was, the way I grew up, something that again informed me to participate in gangs and crime and all those things. There was nothing in place in my community that would have steered me in the right direction. And if there was no one that I would have listened to at the time. I will say this in terms of like libraries, like that was also an opposition. I remember as a kid, like bookmobile was one of my favorite things. My stepfather used to try to, when I was struggling with reading, he would take me to the bookmobile and help me, you know, like pick out different books and stuff there. Like Choose Your Own Adventure was one of my favorites. So I did eventually develop a love for reading. So I just wanted to add that to all you librarians out there. Shout out to you all. Love it. But like some of the work that we're doing, you know, to push back against this narrative about people who commit crimes deserve life without the possibility of parole. It's all about, as Romarilyn pointed out, it's about proximity. It's about engaging people and really informing them like about the individuals who are incarcerated. We have to humanize ourselves because, as you know, there's a lot of fear mongering, and public safety is the phrase that's tossed out there a lot by a lot of our public officials. You know, the ones that are specifically who are running for office, they hang their hats on that because people want to be safe. I'm formerly incarcerated, but I also want to be safe. I want to live in a community where the neighborhood is safe as well. But that comes from me, you know, really understanding like the message that's being spread. And so we're at a disadvantage because there's not a lot of us, I feel, that are actually out there speaking to these issues and giving light to what fear mongering is, giving light to the individuals who have committed harm, and also that some of us are actually, you know, in company with survivors of crime and really trying to push back against, like, there is a way, there is an alternative to incarceration. There is an alternative to sending someone to life without the possibility of parole at 16, 17 years old, you know, for a crime that they committed, that there's an opportunity for change. And I think that myself and Romarilyn and thousands of other people are a testament to that. But when we get into this mindset of, you know, these people have done this horrible thing and it's always these people, those people. Like they should be punished, and we lose. We definitely lose. And prisons doesn't make us safer, but these conversations that we're having right now, and here's an example of how communities overlap, because outside of this, I don't think that I've ever would have met any of you. And so the sharing, as a communication scholar, we have these things that when people are in conversation, we create reality. And I feel like this conversation alone, regardless of what you take away from it, it's going to create another reality, and it's going to inform your decision making as well as mine as well. And I hope I touched on the topic. But again, I am a scholar, so I talk a lot, talk all over the place. So somebody just reel me in, please. So I'll pass it on to Marilyn.
Oh, thank you, Alan. And, I just want to echo how you started off with just shouting out, librarians, thank you for all the work that you do. Like Alan, I also love books and love libraries, and went to the bookmobile every week. It drove up to our school. So shout out to the librarians of the world. You are the gatekeepers of knowledge. You sit in these amazing public spaces where there's so much information and so much scholarly work that is available to just regular people. To have a library card, you don't necessarily have to have a certain income. You just need to have a residence. And sometimes that's problematic as well. So speaking of transformative justice, libraries should be an open space. Folks should be able to come in, check out a book, listen to books on tape, get information, learn, explore the world through literature, through the written word, through poetry, through all kinds of things. That's the librarian's space. You all have such an amazing, incredible responsibility. So I just want to make sure that I pay homage to you and thank you for all that you've done, and also the teachers of the world. My niece is a teacher. And so I'm just incredibly grateful for what education has done for me. I just think, as far as the things we should be thinking about with abolition, public safety, we just have to take our cues from Ruthie Gilmore and Angela Davis and Miriam Kaba and so many other people who are creating the way for us, in thinking about how these structures, these systems that are in place in our society continue to harm us, separate us, and segregate us. And so in thinking about abolition, it's a hot topic right now, especially with the defund movement and all the other reimagining public safety conversations we've had, especially since George Floyd was murdered in 2020. I think it's really important that abolition takes center stage, because I think that's how we're really going to get to have a world without prisons, a world without punishment. We have to build that. We have to, of course, dismantle and abolish and reimagine the harmful systems that we have now that were in place and put in place by the architects of this society, which of course don't look like myself, Alan, or Frieda. We're talking about white men. We're talking about colonialism. We're talking about all of us who have been colonized in one way or another through patriarchal systems, capitalism, all of the things that Frieda mentioned, and start to look at how we want to take these systems, dismantle them, but focus on building the systems that we want. And I think that's what transformative justice is all about. How do we transform our communities into the spaces and the places that serve us best? And Alan can attest to some of the ways that we've done this inside of the prison. The prison is a place of punishment. The prison is a place of retribution. But those of us who have been inside for decades, we go into these spaces sometimes very broken, and in pain. But within that space, we find other people who are also broken and in pain and who want to come out of that brokenness and that suffering. And we come together because I think that's the importance of the human spirit, you know, and the connection of the human spirit. And we're able to look in each other's eyes and find ways to support one another and heal each other and transform each other in some of the most wretched places that we have built on this planet, the prisons. And that's what transformative justice is about. It's about people connecting with others through wanting to create a place and a space of healing and connection. It's got to be founded in care. And that's what Ruthie talks about all the time, the politics of care, the politics of presence. We have to be present in order to transform our community and transform these systems that continue to want to separate and isolate us. And I think librarians are in the perfect position to help us do that work. I live in Long Beach, California, and there is a library directly across the street from where I live, the Billie Jean King Library. And in front of that library, a lot of houseless people live. All day long, all night, there's tents, there's pallets and bedding in front of that library. It has become a safe space for people who are unhoused in Long Beach. I've gone over and talked to folks, I've brought food, I see other people do the same thing, and it's a sanctuary. And so when I think about libraries and transformative justice and public spaces, these are the kinds of things that I see that work well within our communities. You know, this is where our resources should be going to support our most vulnerable individuals and community members. This is what transformative justice looks like. And so I just want to encourage everyone on this call to continue to use those spaces to provide support for community members. And then lastly, I'll just say, you know, inside of the libraries, it's a different tone than when I grew up. And I would love to see the libraries inside return to, you know, not having metal detectors and police officers. And, you know, it's discouraging, it's disheartening to have to go through that type of security in order to get some knowledge, in order to learn, and in order to, you know, read a book. So I think the transformation of these spaces, we need to start thinking about how do we be more welcoming to our community members, especially those who are vulnerable and who need care.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, Alan, was there anything else you wanted to say before I go to the next question? No? You're muted.
I know, I'm sorry. I just, well, as Romarilyn was speaking about just really the power of the library, and it just to share out a little bit, it reminded me of the time that we were incarcerated. Like we are segregated and separated the same way that, you know, individuals are out here in society. But the library was the one place where, regardless of where you grew up geographically, your race, gangs, that people would come together and they would have real in-depth communication and conversation about whether it was their case, then their case turned into which John Steinbeck book that they wanted to read, or things like that. So the library it's a public sphere, and it should remain a public sphere. And I feel like as I'm on this call, and I'm thinking like this would be the space where, you know, where communities do overlap, like formerly incarcerated people can come, and other people that, you know, are not system impacted can come and really have like these in-depth conversations. And I would like to see maybe like a call to action where we can come to a specific library and meet people from other communities and really just sit down and talk about like these real issues, you know. But that's really like, you know, that's I think this is valuable. I think it is because the only time that some of us meet people from different communities is when there's an opposition, you know, to a bill or something like that that would impact, you know, formerly incarcerated people or incarcerated people. But there's no real space where people meet. And so, in terms of restorative justice and transformative justice, like I think that would be like really awesome to do that. Just wanted to add that.
And before we move on,
Yes.
Frieda, thank you, Alan, for that, because it got me to thinking about, you know, the reading level of the majority of incarcerated people. It's somewhere around third grade. And so, I mean, let's really ponder that for a moment. You know, if the majority of incarcerated folks in this country, and we're talking about 2 million plus people, have a third grade education, what does that say about our public education system? You know, so if we're not learning in our public in our public schools and getting education through our public libraries, you know, we need to change that. It's very important that we look at, you know, the connections and the intersection between incarceration and education. That's why, you know, the schools not prison movement is so important. So how do we make sure and create that space where we know kids are being educated and have opportunities to get educated? No, that's the public space. I won't belabor that, but I just want us to think about that. You know, there is a direct correlation between education and incarceration. And we have to do something about that. You know, in order for us to abolish prisons, abolish the punishment systems, abolish all the systems that don't work well for all of our community members, we have to reimagine, you know, those systems in a way that create the things that we want. We want an educated community. We want children to be able to read so that they can think for themselves. And it's not until you can think for yourself and then see yourself, you know, in the face of someone else that we can really reimagine what we want our world to be like. And thanks, Frieda, back to you.
Thank you. So this is really in response to you. And now then after this, I'm going to open it up to the audience. And when last night when Romarilyn and Alan and I were talking about this panel, you know, they gave me a lot more of their input, which helps me formulate what I'm going to say, which is that, yes, in order to address issue of public safety and community accountability and really violence prevention, we librarians have a very important role in providing education at various levels, children, teens, adults, and having community dialogues. I'm not even talking now about librarians sending books to prison libraries. That's a whole other issue, which I would love to get help on because I've always faced barriers on that. But just if we just talk about the issue of community education and what we can do in terms of violence prevention through community education, there is so much that we can still do at public libraries. And frankly, I am really surprised at how little most public librarians do. Maybe I'm wrong, but my experience has been that most public librarians, they just want to have their maybe one book talk per month, maybe a children's reading hour, maybe a teen council where, you know, they eat popcorn and watch movies. Adult education is mostly resume writing, computer science, which is important, but it doesn't get to the issue of critical thinking and ideas that we need to be discussing and history. And certainly not the conversations on controversial issues that we need to be having about current world events. I am not seeing public librarians in this country doing that. Here and there, maybe, but and I read ALA Connect every day, and the discussion on ALA Connect is usually pretty bland. So maybe some of you in the audience can help us figure it out. Why is it that even though we still have so many resources in this country, and not all public libraries have been gagged by the extreme right, we're not all in Texas and Florida. Some of us are in other states where we still have a lot of resources. Why is it that we librarians have become so, have such tunnel vision? We've become almost mechanical about our work. We've become robots in a way. So with that, I would like to open it up to the audience. And I haven't been able to read the chat because I was paying attention to the Romarilyn and Alan's responses. So let me take a look at the chat and see what questions there are.
Thank you, Frieda, for that, those words. And I just want to add to it. We can't be passive about what we want. I know it's scary. You know, there's so much bullying going on with social media, but we have to remain vigilant. You know, we have to, you know, stand up for what we believe in. And no matter what, you know, we have to put ourselves out there to say this is wrong.
Yes.
And people deserve a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, however many chances.
Yes.
That's what our humanity dictates. If we're not going to be the best version of ourselves, then we're going to have an issue in society. We should never fall back on separating ourselves and categorizing and othering, you know, and putting these labels on who's deserving and who's not deserving of things. We're all deserving of all the things that we have here in this world, and beautiful things, you know, and I won't get into all of the resources, but last thing I'll say, and then we'll go to the Q&A, is some of our state budgets, when it comes to corrections, it's just unbelievable the amount of money that goes into corrections. In California, we're looking at $13 billion with the B that goes into corrections to support 32 prisons. And we have 100,000 people incarcerated in this state, and we're spending $13 billion. We have 2 women's prisons, a little over 3,500 women, and we're spending $408 million to incarcerate 3,500 women. We've got to be better stewards of those resources. We've got to do better. We've got to move that money. And I mean, we have to move that money into the public spaces to take care of each other. We don't need prisons, and we don't need a prison system that absorbs that kind of resources from our taxpayers and robs and strips us of the most basic needs our community members need. We can't do that. Homeless people, houseless people, all of the things that we see every day that we're sick and tired of seeing, the suffering of our community members, will continue if we don't redirect those resources. And so I just have to make that really clear. We have to do better and demand of our elected officials to do better by us. That's what they're in office for. Over the past, there you go. We have some stuff in it.
Okay, I'm trying to read the questions. Derek, if you've been following the questions, would you kindly read me the first one?
Okay, I haven't seen any questions in the chat there, Frieda. So I've directed folks to put them into the Q&A. It's easier for us to follow on that as well. So if anyone has any questions, please enter them into the Q&A feature of Zoom. Thank you.
Okay, I see a comment from Deanna Berry. Deanna says, I'm a librarian for a public library system. Much of my day-to-day work involves more social services, not actual librarianship. And we do not have tunnel vision. We're dealing with other issues and can only do so much. Yes, I understand. But I still think I myself was a public librarian for over 20 years. We still have a lot of opportunities to have educational programs and current events discussions. And the fact that we're caving in to this effort to make us only social workers is itself problematic. It really is a problem. We shouldn't allow that to happen. Rachel says, over the past decade, the cost of imprisoning one person in California has increased by more than 90%, reaching a record-breaking 132,000. Matthew Cassidy says, we've attempted a few philosophy and critical thinking focused programs, but they have not been well attended or attended at all. A big part of what we do is focused on meeting the needs of our communities. And more often than not, those needs are often met by things like a quiet, safe space to just exist in for free and perhaps a movie and popcorn. Okay, I understand that, Matthew, but then where does our responsibility fit for promoting critical thinking? And what, if something doesn't work, we should try a different thing. But the goal should be to promote critical thinking, not only to meet the basic needs, movie, popcorn, safe space, of course, but we need to do much more than that. Aaron Blomberg, do you have a paper you were presenting? Okay, yes. So that's a question to Romarilyn and Alan. You can get in touch with Romarilyn and Alan if you wish about papers you've presented on these topics. They've presented on these topics. LIS professional organizations are ideologically committed to the capitalist and imperialist status quo. That's from Lawrence Maminta. Thank you, Lawrence.
You do have one question in the Q&A.
Okay.
And it's, I wonder if library employees are concerned with keeping their jobs and don't want to jeopardize their jobs.
I'm sure you are. I mean, why would someone want to jeopardize their livelihood? They need to put food on their tables and take care of their family members. I mean, no one wants to be unemployed. So of course, you're going to need to follow the rules, but that doesn't mean that you can't push the boundaries. And then hopefully influence others to push the boundaries, and then create a culture of care within the library space. We have the power to create a culture of care. We have to think collectively to do that, and not just think about our paychecks all the time. Because I think when we challenge one another to think about, having a meal. When we're hungry, we can go to our refrigerators or go to the store and buy something. There's millions of people who can't do that. And so when we have empathy for others, we can think about ways to create and share with one another. Maybe librarians for a day bring an extra lunch and share a sandwich with someone who hasn't eaten today at the library. Maybe there's a way to take those, books that you have and create maybe not a book mobile, but a way to go into underserved communities and give away those books and maybe have reading circles. I mean, we have to reimagine the waste that sometimes we don't even think about. There's so much waste from all of us. All of us on this call today are extremely privileged just to be on this call, to have internet access, to be able to register for this event. We are privileged to do that. And sometimes we just take things for granted. And then we say that we're powerless and we can't do these things. There are a lot of things that we can do, because I know what it feels like not to have anything, to be stripped of everything and given a number and told what to do and how to do it every day, and be abandoned by your family and work for 8 cents an hour I know that. Many of you on this call don't know that. So there are things we can do with the resources that we have that will not jeopardize our jobs or our safety or our livelihoods. We can share, we can reimagine, we can help someone else, because that is the only reason why I am here today. If it were not for those people in that prison, those visiting the prison, those providing services to that prison, to help pour into my life, to help keep me sane and in my right mind, if it wasn't for books, if it wasn't for the librarian at that prison, Miss Lenore, who helped us develop the African American Women Prisoners Association and borrow books from other libraries so that we could continue to educate ourselves in our own history, I would not know what I know now, would not have continued my education after the '94 crime bill. So there are things we can do, and we must not get passive or lazy in that doing.
Absolutely. And I agree with Romarilyn in her saying that there are still things that we can do within the limits that we face that would promote critical thinking and would not endanger our jobs. Be happy to talk with anyone who would like to discuss this. Please contact me. I would gladly offer you 10 different ideas. And also consider the fact that if we don't make an attempt, we're going to lose what we have right now. We're going to lose the very basic rights that we have in this country. I mean, everyone knows what we're facing in November if Donald Trump becomes the next president. We face the possibility of complete total fascism in this country, closing of libraries, firing public workers en masse. So let's do what we can do with what we have in the time frame that we still have left. Let's not take this all for granted. See what other comments there are. I attend a monthly free and open to anyone book club gathering at my local public library where we talk about books we are reading. The discussions are lively, involve critical thinking, and create a sense of community as it is held in person. Topics discussed have included related issues to today's discussion, but through the literature, primarily fiction, maybe a backdoor approach. That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Romarilyn. Your words are powerful and inspirational. Okay, Rachel says, what simple and impactful suggestions, Romarilyn, for the work that all of us need to do to create and inspire in others a culture of care. That's Rachel. Prior to that was Angela, Suvi, Manner. This is exactly what I told all the correctional libraries in Michigan the other day. No one responded. And Suvi says library advocacy is vital so we can continue all the important work.
Frieda, is there another question that you need to ask us? Our time is almost up.
Well, I mean, if there is no other question, I think what I wanted to bring up was that when we discuss the issue of public safety, I mean, I think part of our work as librarians is to confront this environment of fear and hate mongering that is so prevalent in the US and around the world. And so it's important for us librarians to really have our facts. So for instance, to say that to those who say, oh, crime is up, there's crime everywhere, that the fact is violent crime is down in this country. The murder rate is down. It's property crime that's up. And that has to do with poverty. It has to do with exploitation. It has to do with the conditions of life of people that drives them to theft. Or at least not, maybe not the gang leadership, but the majority of those who get involved in property crime, they are hurting. They're hurting financially. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. So that's one fact. The other is that this attack on migrants as criminals, when Trump says they're poisoning the blood of this country, we have to stand up to that. Migrants are not criminals. I mean, first of all, the facts are completely opposed to that. Facts show that migrants actually really contribute to our society in every way. So, but simply in terms of the murder rate of migrants, the number of migrants involved in crime and murder is comparatively very, very small.
Freedom,
Yes.
may I interrupt you for a
Please.
moment? Since you know what's criminal is that we have young people and children sleeping on the streets
Yes.
and not going to school
Yes.
and addicted to drugs. And we have, you know, youth facilities busting at the seams with 14 and 16 years as adults and being sentenced, as Alan said, to life without the possibility of parole. That's criminal. You know, we have to get our our priorities straight. You know, we can't, this is America. This is supposed to be the melting pot of the world. You know, folks are supposed to be able to come here and have a free life, you know, participate in the democratic process. We got a problem there. So I think we need to keep the main thing. You know, we need to fix our problems here at home. We have a lot of those problems that we need to focus on. There are too many children incarcerated. There are too many women incarcerated. We can eliminate just those things like that. But there are laws on the books that demonize certain behaviors which makes no sense. Because on one hand, we know that we have scientific evidence of brain development not having the cognitive abilities to think rationally and critically until age 25, but yet we are still sentencing children 14, 15, 16 years old to life in prison for just supposedly decisions that they made. And so in the last few minutes, I just want to make a plea to all of the librarians. It is so critical and so important that you continue to make available to all of us the resources that are within your control. And then bring in the community into your public spaces to create dialogue and to create a circle where folks can talk about issues that concern them and figure out ways to help one another and support one another. Those are things that I think are very important for us to start to do in this world that is so full of hatred. I see a hand up. Jack?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Romarilyn, that's a beautiful what you say. We're going to be presenting later as part of the Arts and Corrections program. But one of the things that I think that libraries can do in a very specific and concrete way is to make sure that people who are coming out on parole are made welcome and know that the library is available to them. The most difficult transition is getting out of prison and reestablishing yourself in the community. And the community needs to create spaces where those people can feel welcome, where they can get resources and this sort of thing. And the library is an ideal place for that. And people who are getting out on parole need to know that. So librarians can reach out, their transitional homes and stuff like that. And, the library is there for you, maybe a session that has, resources for parolees that the library has available, these kinds of things. So anyway, that's a suggestion.
That's a wonderful suggestion, Jack. Even a jobs board. Maybe there's some workshops that you all can do with resume writing and preparing for a job and interview skills and, you know, all kinds of things. Because the reentry population is ginormous and the reentry service providers have very few resources. So there's just ways to kind of recreate that. And I see you, Alan. I'm sorry, Frieda, I'm taking over your
No,
mic.
please, because I can't see everyone on the screen. So if you've raised your hand and I didn't call you, it's because I'm not seeing you. Please, by all means, speak.
I just want to jump in there real quick and Jack Bowers, I want to say thank you for bringing that up. You know, as I work specifically with a lot of people coming home from prison, and you know, imposter syndrome is huge. You know, and not just in the education space, but just people transitioning home. And yes, we need those additional resources. And for some people, the library may be the place where they can go and get, you know, technical support. A lot of people aren't coming from prison and going straight into education. They're coming from prison and going straight into remedial jobs like construction work and things like that. But they need to know that there is other opportunities. And in California, we have so many people incarcerated, as you know. Like we can't reentry programs can't do it all alone. So you need that additional support and from the library. That would be amazing. And like I said earlier, like these conversations right here is creating reality. Thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Thank you so much. I believe we've reached the end of our time. Is that correct, Derek?
Just about. We've got about 4 minutes left. If you'd like, there's a few more comments that I could read out loud if you'd like.
Yes, please. Would you kindly read this?
So Suvi Manor mentioned that they forgot to say in their presentation this morning that a large number of the guys in the facility that they work up in prison and were teens or under 18 when they were locked up. They're studying, improving their lot themselves. It is very impressive, as was evidenced by all the writing done in the library book club they started. And then Ashabi Rich says, and this is a little bit long, prison is not so much a punishment system, though certainly it is that. It's a ginormous business money-making system in which many people are encouraged to invest, and in which they do invest knowingly or unknowingly. My university's nine old news are invested in the prison industrial complex business. Greed and or ignorance has been invested in this system, knowingly or unknowingly. For example, retirement, investment choices. We have children, teen daily meal programs within the libraries and free community refrigerators, food banks, food kitchens, community gardens, some located very near libraries. They're open 24/7. They know it's still not enough because our public school system is public school system is shameful. In Philly, Pennsylvania, minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. We all know what is going on. Guns and drugs are intentional. We know this is a global strategy. We know prison is a free labor system. Drugs, legal and illegal, are a control factor. And they said, you know, they can go on. Julie says, thank you to the presenters. Congratulations to Romarilyn and Alan for your courage. Let's see. Deanna says many public library systems do offer resources to incarcerated, decarcerated individuals. I do outreach to jail facilities monthly with a volunteer organization. And Angela also stated, I was curious about the comment about writing and book clubs while incarcerated. Are facilitators allowed to come in? There's a question for.
That would be for me. Yeah, I'm trying to work on that. In fact, I wrote a proposal with the University of Michigan's Prison Creative Arts Project, and I'm working with the director there to try to see if we can get them to be able to come in. So I am in the process of doing that, but I am a very new correctional librarian. I haven't even been there for a year. I basically just got all my ideas, well, some of my ideas from the other librarian who presented with me and who's in another institution. But yeah, I'm working on it, but it's it's a very difficult process because I am not the special activities person. So I don't technically have the authority to make these decisions by myself, but kind of like what I just heard, I was very inspired by the presentation. I got the tail end of it. I just came in from an appointment, ran back up here. That is just, you know, like we have to try to push the boundaries however we can. And that's what I'm trying to do. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suvi.
Thank
Why
you,
is-
everyone. Was there anything else that needs to be read, Derek?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate uh, uh, speaking with Romarilyn Ralston and Alan Burnette and learning about their wisdom that comes from experience and deep experience, deep knowledge. We're grateful to you, Romarilyn and Alan. And thanks to everyone for your questions and your comments. And looking forward to continuing this dialogue with anyone who would like to reach out to us. Thank you. Should I end the session there? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.